Hi, this is Curt and welcome to another edition of Fire Law Roundup.
Super interesting.
All right. Oh, on the FLSA now?
Yeah, let's do the highly compensated.
Okay, yeah. This is, my friend Bill Macarone and I were discussing this. He had a class on the executive exemption last week, and we talked quite a bit about this case. And we think it came out wrong for different reasons. We think it came out wrong. Okay. But bottom line is it's out there now. So, but we've got a fire department in Virginia, the Alexandria, Virginia Fire Department, and a group of, I think it was 10 battalion chiefs who consisted both of line chiefs who were, basically on shift, and administrative chiefs who were on a 40-hour schedule, claimed that they were entitled to overtime, that they were hourly employees and entitled to overtime. And the most common way that municipalities characterize chiefs as exempt is they say that they're exempt executives. And in this case, that's one of the defenses that the city came up with. There's a few problems with that characterization. The first one, first of all, you have to be on a salary. And there's some question, there's a factual question. This was Bill's big point about whether or not these people actually were on a salary or whether they were hourly. So there's a factual question in there that the court did not deal with. They kind of shuffled their feet a little bit and just said, we consider them to be on salary. But there's a deeper factual question. That was Bill's big point. Bill is, Bill's been busy at work, and he said he was going to be doing a blog on it. He has firefighterovertime.org, and he was going to be doing a blog, and I wanted to tie into it so that folks could understand what he was saying about the salary aspect of it.
And you are frozen again, just so you know.
Oh boy, you know what? Let me go back. No, that's okay. Let me go back, and I'm gonna let's see. I'm gonna go back to my
benefit of live recording. You get to see all this exciting camera fiascos take place.
Okay, so I went back to, I think, the lower quality video. So, but so that was sort of Bill's take on it, that it was really about these guys weren't really paid a salary. And I think that's a strong argument because, the idea of being an exempt executive, like an attorney, an attorney would also qualify as a professional employee, right. But the idea is that if I'm a manager of a big corporation, like I was a manager at the NFPA, okay, if I wanted to come in at 10 o'clock in the morning, I come in at 10 o'clock in the morning, as long as I didn't have a meeting or something, come in at 10, and I want to leave and go play golf early at 3 o'clock, I leave early. That's now understanding that I may have to go to a board of directors meeting or this or that, or I may have to stay up late to finish a budget or something, and I'm not going to get overtime, but I can kind of come and go as I feel like. I'm not punching a clock. Well, guess what? When it comes to battalion chiefs who are on a shift,
yeah,
right? You can't just go home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and say, "Yeah, guys, I'll be back at 6. If you need me, I'll be on the golf course." So you are, in some respects, that. The other problem with this is that the Department of Labor came out with some regulations in 2004 called the First Responder Regulations. The First Responder Regulations basically said that if your job is to respond to fires, even if you're supervising other people, if your job is your primary duty is to respond to fires, then you're an hourly employee. End of story. That's the end of it. And many courts are just ignoring it. And in this case, the court didn't even discuss that. They didn't even mention the first responder regulations. So, but what they did was they didn't go to the executive exemption. They went to another part. It's really it's part of the executive exemption. And it's a part of the executive exemption that says that it's possible that if you are highly paid, if you're paid, and right now I've got the regs.
175,000, wasn't these people?
107,000. If you make more than $107,000 a year, then there is an sort of a
presumption
that in and of itself can indicate that you're exempt.
Right.
But you also have to have at least one of the duties. And they went through, they spent a lot of time discussing all the duties that battalion chiefs have that qualify them as exempt. But again, it ignores the first responder regulations, and the court didn't even discuss the first responder regulations. And the highly compensated.
This is getting appealed.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I hope so. Okay. And not that I don't want to favor one side or the other, because I try to go straight down the middle. But when a decision is just clearly wrong, I mean, when there's a regulation on point and the court doesn't even discuss it in a ruling,
right?
I mean, they should have said the first responder regs don't apply in this case, and here's why. Right. They didn't even do that. They just pretended like they didn't exist.
Yeah.
So that's sort of problem number one. Problem number two is that in order to qualify for the first responder regulations, you have to be involved in non-manual labor. Well, what does a firefighter do? I mean, that's clearly manual labor.
They addressed it though, right? Because they said that
they
they're just directing, they're not doing any manual labor.
And that's a lot of crap. And how do you prove that? Here's, Battalion Chief Jones, let me see your helmet. Boy, that's a pretty heavy helmet. Why would you have a helmet if you're not engaged in manual fire suppression? You wouldn't need a helmet like that, would you? Let's see your turnout gear. I can't bring my turnout gear into the courtroom. Why not? Well, it's potentially contaminated, and we don't allow it to be brought into living quarters and other places. Your gear's contaminated, but you're a manual employee, or you're a non-manual employee. And then maybe we get some pictures of these non-manual employees after a fire with sweat and dirt and everything else on them, and maybe even video of them at the fire with smoke blowing past them and and all the things that happen. So I really, I think the court would have gotten it right for the administrative chiefs, the folks who are on the 40 hours a week, but I just think your line chiefs, boy, I really think that flies in the face of the first responder regulations. But at any rate, what the court said is that because of the highly compensated employee exemption, they qualify as exempt, and they're not entitled to overtime. So hopefully it will be appealed. Hopefully we'll get some clarification on it. If not, what I would envision, and I don't think the Fourth Circuit, this would go to the Fourth Circuit, I don't think the Fourth Circuit is overly employee friendly. So that would be one of my concerns. Maybe I'll have to go to the U.S. Supreme Court, who's not overly employee friendly either. But I think if this persists, I mean, I can see departments struggling to fill battalion chief roles, because you're going to have captains who are making more with their overtime and everything, and battalion chiefs that are making less, and people are saying, you know what, I'm going to say a captain. Why would I want the headaches that go along with being a battalion chief and to make for the privilege of making less?
Right.
Just doesn't make sense.
And that's, part of why you keep using the words, and they're important words, clarification. We would really caution anybody saying, here's a court case, now we're going to do this, because this may not be right, or may not be right for the wrong reasons. So before you start changing anything on this case, right, or patting yourself on the back for a practice that is similar, let's just wait a couple of years, honestly, years, to see where this turns out, because this does seem a little far-fetched.
Yeah, it just, and other courts have rejected the application of that particular exception to call them non-manual employees. And some departments have rules that say that the incident commander is going to sit in the vehicle, that somehow, well, still, I mean, if they're non-manual, why do they have turnout gear? Why do they have to qualify for, for their fit test?
Well, and I compare them, I haven't looked at this for a while, but hopefully I'll get it right. I compare them to site supervisors of construction, right? A construction site supervisor is absolutely manual, no question. They're on the radio, they're doing they're taking photography, they're monitoring levels of gases, or they're making sure safety procedures are in place. And they are always, almost always, I'm saying always because I've never seen it not be always, they're always manual laborers because they're on a site doing the exact same things. But there was something of picking up a radio and monitoring the other workers in the field that made them manual. And in one opinion, God, forever ago, I read on this, they were talking about they're walking on uneven ground and they had to walk in such a careful manner that it was laborious, right? So the walking on this uneven, dangerous construction site was deemed manual labor. And I haven't seen that for so long, but it's just, I read it because it's just like the fire ground. You know, you're in the warm zone, maybe not the hot zone, but you're not in the cold zone. You are picking up radios. You are doing, you're writing on boards, right? You are doing manual things. I have a hard time believing a chief, as exactly as you said, is not manual. And if that chip falls, that domino falls, this whole thing goes away.
Well, I agree. And, you know, other industries don't have the benefit of the first responder regulations. It applies to police, fire, and EMS. So those have been adopted by the Department of Labor to clarify this. And the courts think, you know, judges, they're human and they have certain leanings, whether it's pro-employee or pro-management. And sometimes, you know, you look at a certain case through the lens of your philosophy here, but the first responder regs were enacted to clarify that. Right. And judges are just
to ignore it, right? Makes no sense. You got to address it.
Here's your first responder regulations. So.
And federal courts, I'll end on this, but federal courts are very good. Federal court decisions are usually very lengthy, very complete, and very detailed, and normally would address an exception that could be applicable and explain why it's not. Yeah. So
well, let me think. I want to do something that goes against the regs. How am I going to do this? I'm just not going to mention the regs.
Right. Right.